Hi, I'm Michael, a 16-year-old high school student from a small town in Ohio. My life took an unexpected turn last year when my mom remarried. At first, I was cautiously hopeful about having a stepfather. I thought it might be nice to have a male role model around. Boy, was I wrong. My new stepfather, Richard, seemed fine at first. He'd take us out for ice cream and ask about my day at school. But soon, things started to change. I began noticing how he would subtly criticize me to my mom when he thought I couldn't hear. He'd say things like, "Don't you think Michael's been spending too much time with his friends? Maybe we should limit his social activities." One day, I overheard him in the kitchen talking to my mom. "I'm just concerned about Michael's grades. Maybe we need to enforce stricter rules about his study habits," he said. The thing was, my grades were fine. I was a solid B student, but Richard made it seem like I was on the verge of failing. When I tried to talk to my mom, she brushed it off, saying, "Richard's just trying to help, sweetie. He cares about your future." Things only got worse when Richard offered me a part-time job at his company. At first, I was excited. It seemed like a great chance to earn some money and gain work experience. Plus, I thought maybe it would help us bond. The first few weeks were fine. I was filing paperwork, answering phones, nothing too complicated. But one day, Richard called me into his office. "Michael, we need to talk about your performance," he said, his face serious. I was confused. Is something wrong? I thought I was doing okay. Richard shook his head. "I'm afraid not. There have been serious issues with your work. I'm going to have to let you go." I was stunned. "What issues?" No one mentioned any problems. His reply was cold. "That's part of the problem, isn't it? You haven't been paying attention. I'm sorry, but I can't keep you on if you're not going to take this seriously." I left his office in a daze. I knew he was lying. I had been doing my job just fine, but I had no way to prove it. When I got home, I told my mom, "Richard fired me today." She looked surprised. "Why?" Before I could answer, Richard walked in. "Oh, honey, I'm sorry you had to hear about it like this," he said, putting an arm around my mom. "I was hoping to talk to you first. Michael's just not cut out for office work. I think it's better if he focuses on his studies for now." I couldn't believe it. He was already spinning the story, making it seem like he was doing me a favor. The worst part? My mom was nodding along, buying every word. In that moment, I realized something had shifted. It wasn't just about losing a job. Richard had found a way to come between me and my mom, and I had no idea how to fix it. After being fired, I knew I had to take control of my own future. I couldn't rely on my mom or Richard anymore. So I threw myself into my studies and started looking for any job I could find. I worked shifts at the local diner, mowed lawns, and even tutored younger kids in math. It wasn't glamorous, but every dollar I earned felt like a small victory over Richard. When it was time to apply for college, I didn't even ask my mom or Richard for help. I spent hours at the library researching scholarships and filling out applications. All that hard work paid off when I got accepted to State University with a partial scholarship. The day I told my mom about my acceptance, I hoped she'd be proud. Instead, she looked worried. "Oh, honey, that's so far away. Are you sure you want to go there?" I could hear Richard's influence in her voice. "Mom, it's a great opportunity. I've already figured out how to pay for it." She frowned. "But Richard said he could help you get into the community college here. Wouldn't that be easier?" I bit back my frustration. "I appreciate that, but I want to do this on my own." As I packed up to leave for college, the tension between my mom and me only grew. Every conversation seemed to circle back to Richard's opinions or concerns. It hurt, but I knew I had to focus on my own future. College was tough. I was juggling 2 part-time jobs while carrying a full course load. There were nights when I collapsed into bed, completely exhausted, wondering if it was all worth it. But then I'd think of Richard's smug face when he fired me, and that memory fueled my determination to keep going. I didn't go home much during those 4 years. Each visit grew more awkward than the last. My mom tried to bridge the growing distance between us, but Richard was always there, a constant reminder of why I'd left in the first place. Finally, graduation day arrived. As I put on my cap and gown, I felt an overwhelming sense of pride. I'd done this on my own, despite everything. Scanning the crowd, I searched for my mom's face, and then I saw them. My mom looked uncomfortable, while Richard stood beside her, wearing that familiar, self-satisfied smirk. After the ceremony, they approached me. "Congratulations, son," Richard said loudly, clapping me on the back. I always knew you had it in you. I tensed at his touch. Thanks, I replied stiffly. Richard wasn't done. You know, he continued, his voice loud enough for others to hear. We should talk about reimbursement for your tuition. After all, your mother and I made quite the investment in your future. I stared at him stunned. What are you talking about? I paid for this myself. Richard laughed as though I'd made a joke. Now, don't be ungrateful. We all know how expensive college is these days. People nearby, including my classmates and their families, glanced over, their faces filled with confusion and sympathy. My mom looked mortified. In that moment, I wanted to expose Richard for the fraud he was, but I held back. This wasn't the time or place. Instead, I turned to my mom and said, "Thanks for coming," giving her a quick hug before walking away. As I joined my friends for photos, my mind was already racing. Richard had shown his true colors in front of everyone. Now it was time to plan my next move. I wasn't going to let him get away with this. The day after graduation, I began my investigation. I reached out to former coworkers from Richard's company, people I'd barely known during my short time there. To my surprise, many were eager to talk. I couldn't believe it when I heard how he treated you, said Sarah, who had been the receptionist. But after what happened to me, I guess I shouldn't be surprised. I leaned in. What do you mean? What happened? Sarah's story mirrored mine. Richard had fired her after she questioned some strange entries in the company's financial records. He said I was being nosy, that it wasn't my place to ask questions, she explained. As I spoke with more former employees, a clear pattern emerged. Richard had a habit of getting rid of anyone who showed too much interest in the company's finances. It was time to dig deeper. I set up a meeting with a lawyer, a no-nonsense woman named Ms. Chen. I explained everything I had uncovered so far. I know it's not much, I said, but there's got to be something we can do, right? Ms. Chen listened carefully. Actually, she said, there might be. If we can get access to the company's financial records, we might be able to prove fraudulent activity. But how? I asked. Richard's not just going to hand them over. Ms. Chen smiled. No, but remember, your mother is his wife. Depending on how the business is structured, she might have legal rights to that information. It was a long shot, but it was something. Over the next few months, I worked tirelessly, gathering statements from former employees and piecing together a timeline of Richard's suspicious activities. One breakthrough came when I reconnected with Tom, the company's former accountant. I always knew something was off, he confided, but Richard had a way of making you doubt yourself. When I raised concerns, he'd laugh it off, tell me I was overthinking things. Tom had kept copies of some financial documents, just in case. As we pored over them together, the extent of Richard's embezzlement became clear. He'd been siphoning off company funds for years, disguising it as business expenses. Armed with this evidence, I met with Ms. Chen again. This is good, she said, reviewing the documents. Really good. I think we have enough to file a lawsuit. I hesitated. A lawsuit? Is that really necessary? Ms. Chen looked at me seriously. Michael, what Richard's done isn't just unethical. It's illegal. He's stolen money, manipulated people, and created a hostile work environment. He needs to be held accountable. I thought about everyone Richard had hurt, how he'd driven a wedge between me and my mom. I nodded. Okay, let's do it. As we prepared the lawsuit, I braced myself for the storm that was coming. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about justice for everyone Richard had wronged. The day we filed the lawsuit, everything changed. Richard's carefully constructed world began to crumble. At first, he tried to brush it off. It's just a disgruntled ex-employee trying to cause trouble, he told the local paper. But as more details emerged, his bravado started to fade. Former employees came forward, sharing their stories. The media latched onto the case, painting Richard as a small-town tyrant who had abused his power. Each new revelation dug him deeper into a hole. I watched it all unfold from a distance, feeling a mix of satisfaction and sadness. I hadn't wanted it to come to this, but Richard had left me no choice. The courtroom became my second home as the case dragged on. Richard's lawyers tried every trick in the book to discredit me and the other witnesses. The evidence was too strong. After months of legal battles, the judge finally made her ruling. The court finds in favor of the plaintiff, she announced. Mr. Richard Thompson is hereby ordered to pay restitution to all affected parties and will face criminal charges for embezzlement and fraud. As the courtroom erupted in cheers, I sat there in disbelief. We'd won. Richard was finally going to face the consequences for everything he had done. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed around me. "How does it feel to have exposed your stepfather's crimes?" one asked. I took a deep breath. "This was never about revenge," I said. "It was about doing what's right. I hope this case sends a message that no one is above the law, no matter who they are or what position they hold." As the crowd dispersed, I saw my mom standing off to the side. She looked older, tired. I walked over to her. "I'm so sorry, Michael," she said, her voice breaking. "I should have believed you. I should have seen what was happening." I hugged her tightly. "It's okay, Mom. It's over now." In the weeks that followed, I couldn't stop thinking about other kids who might be going through similar situations. That's when the idea hit me. I used part of the settlement money to start a nonprofit organization that provides legal aid and support to teenagers dealing with difficult family circumstances. It wasn't easy work, but every time we helped someone, it felt like turning my past struggles into something meaningful and positive. As for Richard, last I heard, he was serving time in a minimum security prison. Sometimes I think about visiting him, but I'm not sure I'm ready for that yet. What I am ready for is my future. For the first time in years, I feel like I can breathe. I've learned that standing up for what's right isn't always easy, but it's always worth it in the end. The nonprofit grew beyond my wildest dreams, helping hundreds of teenagers navigate complex family situations. One afternoon, while wrapping up another successful case, I received an unexpected call. It was my mom. "Michael," she said, her voice shaky, "Richard's being released next week." My heart raced. I hadn't thought about him in years. "How are you feeling about that?" I asked cautiously. "Honestly, I'm scared," she admitted. "But I wanted you to know first. I'm filing for divorce." A mix of relief and concern washed over me. "Do you need any help?" "No, sweetie, I've got this. I wanted to thank you for being brave enough to stand up to him when I couldn't." After we hung up, I sat in my office, processing everything. It felt like the final chapter of a long, difficult book was finally closing. A knock on my door interrupted my thoughts. It was Sarah, my first ally in the case against Richard, now my deputy director. "Everything okay, boss?" she asked, noticing my expression. I nodded, feeling a sense of closure and purpose. "Yeah, everything's good. We've come a long way. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever faced a situation where standing up against something wrong not only changed your life, but also led you to your purpose? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this story moving and want to see more, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring more stories like this to light.